Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah. Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the program. It is the Thursday edition of the show, and we are ready. We're ready to go. Ready to go. It's been an interesting week in the legislative session, and we're going to continue some of our discussion on it. Yesterday, the Senate passed their final budget of the final version of the House, of the operating budget back, and now they've passing it over to the House. We're expecting conference committee to meet next week, and we're going to talk about that as well as continuing our discussion and breakdown of what took place in the Senate Majority presser this week. It's a very interesting thing, and I don't know if you guys enjoyed it yesterday. I certainly did, being able to look at some of the things that were being said by our elected leaders, especially those who are in power in the majority, and in their own words, I guess, more than anything else. And so it's some interesting stuff, and we're going to continue to go down that road. I started to watch some of the things that happened on the floor yesterday, but I ran out of time. That's the thing. Part of the problem here that we're dealing with is just the availability of people to be able to kind of follow along at home. Unless you're watching for hours at a time, you're not catching a lot of this stuff. And for those of us who are doing this not as a full-time gig, right? Don't have a researcher, don't have a producer, don't have somebody who can peruse several hours of discussions to pull out all the relevant points. It makes it harder. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, how is the average person who's busy holding a job down and doing all this stuff supposed to follow along at home, and then just get the highlights from the local news? Where they, in my mind, it's very obvious when their own biases are kind of on display as well at the same time. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. I started working on that last night at I don't know, it was 5:30, 5:15, something like that. And after an hour and a half, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm gotta go have some supper and get ready for bed, right? So it's how is everybody else who's holding a job down? Business owners or employees, or we're not watching it during the day. And so I'm thinking that as we get a little better at this, it's hopefully this is something that we'll do more often, where we actually have the actualities of people on the floor and what they say in support or in opposition to certain things out there. I really enjoyed yesterday, and we'll and I'm hoping you did as well, because we're going to continue here this morning. It was only a 25-minute press conference, but it took us most of an hour to get through half of it. It was really like, wow, there's a lot to parse out here and a lot to break down. In hour two, after we finish up with the press information, press availability, we will take some phone calls from you and see, what are your thoughts after we've kind of analyzed it all and taken a look at things. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say as well. So we'll open up the phone lines in hour two to get back with it. So I guess let's just get started. We'll for those of you who weren't here yesterday, we've got the full press availability up and broken down. There were some interesting highlights in that, including the fact that it seems like some of the leadership in the Senate just doesn't want you to. They want you to be concerned about next year, but they really want you to focus on this year. We've heard Bert Stedman say several times that one of the reasons why they've cut the size and scope of the dividend this year, it's only $1,000, which has been pointed out is, with inflation, is the lowest PFD since the permanent fund dividend, since it first started. It's the lowest one ever at a flat $1,000 per person payment. One of the reasonings that they gave for that was, of course, well, we need to, we need to prepare for next year. And then later on, they go back to say, Stedman specifically goes back to say, I don't want people really focusing on, next year. It's not that, we shouldn't, well, this is what he said. He said,
Senator Stedman. Well, the Senate president listed off of a series of headwinds that we're facing. I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena. We see them coming. We're going to try to deal with them. I'd like to have the focus on the FY26 budget and the recognition that next year might be tougher.
So, but he doesn't really want us paying attention to,
I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena.
I just don't want the public to dwell too much on that, because if the public did pay attention to that, they'd be like, well, they might ask the question, how did we get here? How did we get here? If we didn't want to, why are we doing this if we did? And so there are definitely some interesting things that took place yesterday in some of the questions and some of the commentary that came out of or not yesterday, but this week, as came out of the press availability. That was one that struck me, though, was this idea that somehow we shouldn't be paying attention to what's happening in the long term. It's all about the short term. It's all, that's the thing. We don't want you focusing on the, we'll let you know that we're don't focus on the full fiscal picture. We want you to look at this year and then understand that next year is going to be harder. Yeah. Okay. I get that. I got the point on that. But how did we get here and how do we get out of it is the question. And that doesn't seem to be the the question that they're asking themselves, let alone talking about it with the public. So anyway, yesterday we had just finished up all the commentary from the various legislators and senators, and we were just getting into some of the questions from some of the reporters that were in the room. Now, I commented yesterday, somebody sent me a text or a message and said, well, that can't possibly be as true. And I was saying that every time you watch the video of this, which is all this video and audio is coming from KTOO, right? The gavel to gavel. But every time you watch it, there's like 4 people in the room outside of the staff that work there, and they're all reporters. There's no public there. There's no opportunity for the average Alaskan who doesn't happen to live in the Juneau area to be there. I mean, they could have flown down, I suppose, for this one meeting at, $2,000, $3,000 or whatever it cost to do it. But yeah, it's true. There's just a handful of people in the room, but they started to ask the questions. And so we're going to get into some of the questions. And we covered Sabatini's question yesterday, but I think we'll probably revisit it here as we go through. But it'll give you a little bit of a better idea of where these people are at and kind of some of the questions that are being asked on the in this press availability. Let's start over here. Let's see. I've got to catch up with where I'm at here. I believe it's right here.
Becky, to answer your question, the Finance Committee.
Okay, so this was Becky Borer from the Associated Press asking the question.
And much of the revenue that is generated.
No, let's start over here.
Yeah, Senate Bill 113, also known, deals with apportionment. Apportionment.
This was Wielechowski talking about his so-called non-tax tax bill, which I've got some serious questions on, but we'll get back to it. All right.
Okay, Becky.
Hi,
go ahead, Becky.
Hi, maybe for the co-chairs, please. In 2023, the Senate passed a 2575 bill, and at that time there were cautions that we could reach a point where 25% wasn't affordable for a dividend. And so today we're at a point where that minimum is being perhaps pushed aside with the budget considerations, and the House is having discussions about rewriting the dividend and who should qualify for a dividend, if it should be based on income. And so I'm wondering if lawmakers aren't able at this point to hold to what many thought was a minimum just a couple of years ago, what faith should Alaskans have that the program in any traditional sense will continue? And could you speak to, I guess, what needs to happen to ensure a dividend program or a dividend for all of Alaskans continues, or is that an idea that itself is antiquated?
So, I mean, this is a great question because she's talking specifically about now we're revisiting it. Now we're talking about whether there'll be means testing and everything else. And her question is, how can Alaskans have faith that this program will continue? What do we need to do to ensure it? It's a good question. It's a very good question. And unfortunately, it doesn't really get answered. But I mean, they're gonna try and do some cat swinging here. But she is asking what a lot of people are asking: how can we trust you? If you said that 75, because that's what the Senate president said last year, when asked about a long-term fiscal plan, they said, well, 75-25 is our fiscal plan. That was Gary Stevens. That was almost a direct quote. That is our fiscal plan. And now we're seeing that. She just said that's basically being thrown to the wayside. What do we need to do to fix this? The answer is, well, underwhelming. Let's just put it.
Thanks, Becky. We only have one co-chair here, so we'll go to Senator Sedman.
Well, Becky, to answer your question, the Finance Committee has targeted 75-25, and I think the Senate for several years. And that would be the split from this changing the statutory formula. We've had an unprecedented expansion in our oil basin, which has led to billions of dollars in expenditures coming against the revenue stream.
So, at first I thought he was going to say we've had billions of dollars in expansion in our government spend, but no, instead he's going to say it's because we've expanded our oil stuff. And so they're writing it off against, so we're seeing a hit on our, then it becomes about, well, it's the oil company, they're the ones that are, it's not, has nothing to do with us, has to do with the fact that they're expanding their operations in Alaska and they're writing that off against their revenues. And so we don't, we're seeing a lower, basically we're not getting what we should be getting is what he's saying.
We've had an unprecedented expansion in our oil basin, which has led to billions of dollars in expenditures coming against the revenue stream, which has pushed down our revenue. Then we've had declining oil prices and other headwinds that we're dealing with. So this year we were forced to balance a budget with less than a 25% dividend. We also had serious concerns on school funding that needed to be addressed.
So what they're saying is that, we were forced to balance the budget on 75-25, which is a choice. They had a choice. They could have cut back on other services. They could have eliminated, again, how many times have we tried to eliminate the PCNs? The positions that are funded but not filled. How many times last year? How many times this year? Tens of millions of dollars that could have been freed up. But they don't want to do that. So they didn't. So when they said we were forced to balance the budget against the PFD, that's a choice that they've made. We're not making, but the answer is we're not making enough money because the oil companies, they took all this and then so we were just forced to do it. We were forced to take the easy road.
So the dividend portion this year will be $1,000 per person. I hope that's not anyway permanent.
Which is what she just said. I mean, thank you, Captain Obvious.
I hope that's not anyway permanent, that we get through these next couple of years financially and we get the ship kind of turned around and we get some flexibility in our expenditures.
I hope this is not it just doesn't sound very hopeful, does it? We get some flexibility in our expenditures, which is only going to happen if they get new revenues, right? Because they're just not
in our expenditures to not only deal with increased dividends, but also increased capital budget to help us push back on our deferred maintenance and other things. But there is a limited amount of funds. So we have to stay within the reoccurring revenue. The fallback of going into the CBR looks to me to be very dangerous. There's only about $3 billion in there. And if the headwinds continue the way they appear to be the last couple months, we could walk through that little bit of money in no time at all. So we're saving that for a rainier day than there is today.
So for the rainier day, I mean, it's monsoon season outside and you still are like, well, it needs to be a rainier day than today. What it sounds like is we're going to be saving that for down the road. We're going to burn through it, but just not today. Just not today. They're just extending the inevitable. They're refusing to face the reality that cuts have to happen. Now they've talked about some new revenues. That's also probably going to be part of the issue, but they won't even acknowledge that cuts have to happen. They fight against, again, empty positions that have got money attached to them. Some of them for years, and they won't do it. Yeah. We're going to continue here. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up, folks. You literally, oh, I hope it's not permanent. Well, I hope it's not permanent. Rob said, I tried to pull $10 million in empty positions yesterday. Positions that have been empty for 2+ years. No good. I mean, no joy in Mudville.
Very dangerous. There's only about $3 billion in there. And if the headwinds continue the way they appear to be the last couple months, we could walk through that little bit of money in no time at all. So we're saving that for a rainier day than there is today.
If there's continuous headwinds, you mean headwinds that you guys created yourself? I mean, granted, the market situation is troubling and it does make it harder. But you guys set this all up as this is like the perfect storm of we've just grown government and grown government and grown government to the point now to where it's growing on its own to the point to where you're not going to be able to keep up. I mean, you're just not going to be able to. She asked the perfect question, and he still hasn't answered that question. They don't have any, because she said, how do we keep it, right?
If lawmakers aren't able at this point to hold to what many thought was a minimum just a couple of years ago, what faith shall Alaskans have that the program in any traditional sense will continue? And
yeah, that what faith do they have?
And could you speak to, I guess, what needs to happen to ensure a dividend program or a dividend for all of Alaskans continues, or is that an idea that itself is antiquated?
That's the thing. What needs to happen? They never answer. They never answer what needs to happen because they have no plan. I mean, they had a plan. It was 75-25. But that lasted all of 10 months? 11 months? And here they are back already. They have no plan. I mean, she's asking, what do we do?
What needs to happen to ensure a dividend program or a dividend for all of Alaskans continues, or is that an idea that itself is antiquated?
Is that an idea itself that is antiquated? I mean, come on. Come on. Their plan, says Chris, is to end the dividend. You cannot expect them to say that in plain English. The problem is, Chris, they could take all of the dividend, all of it, and there's still not enough money. Year, they potentially next year, the dividend could just go away. And I don't think they would still have enough money to balance the entire budget next year for the proposed budget of what's going to be happening. Still not enough. We haven't even gotten into the supplemental yet from this year, right? The supplemental budget from this year, which gets super interesting. It gets real squidgy around there. Another $200 million that nobody's really even talking about. Why do I keep using we? Well, because. All right, we're going to continue. Here we go, the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We're gonna keep rocking and rolling along here as we go through this. Please like and share, like and follow, do all that kind of stuff. Let's keep going. Here we go. 2, 1.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay, we're continuing now breakdown of the Senate press majority presser this week. And, you know, I just again, I want to highlight the question that Becky Borer of the Associated Press asked early on that they never end up answering in this. But again, just a reminder, this was the big part of her question during the briefing that never got answered. This is what she said.
What needs to happen to ensure a dividend program or a dividend for all Alaskans continues, or is that an idea that itself is antiquated?
What needs to happen? Or is it an idea that's antiquated? Bert Stedman continues to go on and on about, well, we just had to. We just had to. Never answering how we fix it.
A little bit of money and no time at all. So we're saving that for a rainier day than there is today.
That's what they're saving, all that money in thing for a rainier day than it is today.
So I think there's a lot of elected officials that have not given up on the 75-25 split. And we will see what the future brings.
Okay, thank you.
They haven't given up. We'll see what happens. They hope. What it was, I think was Rob said earlier. Hope is not a plan. Hope is not action to fix the problem. They never answer they never respond to what the answer to her question was. How do we ensure that the PFD survives? Nope. No answer. No answer at all.
Okay, thank you, Senator Stedman. Thanks, Becky, for your question. We'll go on to our next questioner.
Never even answered never even got into it.
Mark Sabatini, Juneau Empire.
So this is the one that we played yesterday, and I'm going to replay it because it's such a setup question. And at the end, Jesse Keel gets involved in what I just think is one of the most ridiculous, well, let's just put it, ridiculous commentary that by the way, you remember in the last segment I mentioned, you know, they won't even cut. How many times have we tried to cut empty positions to try and make this better? You know, positions that are funded but not filled. Rob Myers said yesterday he put in an amendment to pull $10 million in empty positions out yesterday. Positions that have been empty for more than 2 years. No joy. They can't even remove positions that from yesterday.
Follow up, I guess, for you as well, Senator Stedman, which is the $1,000 dividend prompted some fairly predictable reactions and comments from folks going, you're stealing $2,800 of my money, find another way to make this work. And so I'm hoping you can spell out, take a scenario where you've got your $12 billion budget, you don't tap the CBR, and using discretionary funds only. Tell me how you construct a budget that provides a full PFD and doesn't tap the CBR. What would you have to do, cut, or otherwise adjust to make that happen?
Well, that's like asking the captain of the Titanic, what are you going to do after you ran into the iceberg? You got bilge pumps, turn them on, you know. You're not going to save that ship no matter what. So under your scenario, the ship sinks. The scenario that we want to go down is looking ahead and steer away from the iceberg.
The ship is sinking. We've already hit the iceberg. That's the thing. I mean, his analogy is so far off. We've already hit it. I mean, it's like the fiddlers are on the deck doing their thing and everything else. And we're like, well, we'll hold that till next year when we really need it.
Is what we're going to try to do is avoid it.
Quick follow. I guess what I was trying to illustrate is I don't know what's discretionary, what you can cut. If you can provide examples of, we'd have to, eliminate the entire Department of Education or whatever. But has any scenario ever been constructed of here's how we could cut $2 billion out of the budget?
Well, I think $2 billion of general funds out of 4.5 or 4.8 is rather daunting, if not impossible. So I'm hoping that after we deliver the
Cutting $2 billion out of $4.8 billion in general fund spending is, daunting, if not impossible. Yeah, but you won't even cut a little bit. That's the thing. It all starts with a single step, but you won't cut anything. I mean,
so I'm hoping that after we deliver the FY26 budget to the governor and he implements it, that he instructs his team in preparation for the FY27 budget to look at programs that we can eliminate, that we could get the political support within the legislature to shrink the expenditure side, because the revenue side is going to be contracted next year, and some of the flexibility that we're using this year won't be available next year.
So again, he wants to lob this grenade back into the governor's court. Well, I hope that the governor next year, puts a budget together and cuts him. He did that in 2018, 29. They did that. They put a budget together with the help of Donna Arduin, one of the most brilliant women on the planet when it comes to governmental fiscal matters. They put a plan together, and it was like people were stabbing kittens everywhere. That's how bad it was. But now you want to lob the thing back over the fence and say, nope, it's back in your court, Governor. We hope that he does it, because they don't want to make the hard decisions. It's obvious from yesterday's vote on eliminating $10 million worth of positions that haven't been filled in 2.5 years or 2 years. And they said no. But we really hope that the governor will step up and
that he instructs his team in preparation for the FY27 budget to look at programs that we can eliminate.
He tried that. You guys beat the piss out of him. You absolutely beat the fight out of the governor. He's not been the same since. Barely survived a recall because of what and now you're like, well, you should just continue to, okay.
And it would be, in my opinion, in the state's best interest for the chief executive of the state to pursue that path versus just do a cookie cutter budget and put it back on the table next December.
Well, the governor has no appropriating power, so it's just a guideline anyway. Now, granted, I've often made the argument that if you were going to do it, you should make a good guideline to start with, but these are the folks that are in charge of the money. They are the ones that have the constitutional authority to do it. Oh, I'd rather have the governor do it. Well, of course you would, because you have no plan.
So we'll see what the governor does in the next budget submission, but the handwriting is on the wall with bold letters. And the finance committee is putting their foot on the brake, like I mentioned a couple months ago, to the point that some people's lips are going to be on the windshield.
I love his analogies. They're so colorful, so colorful. Yes, Michael in the chat room just said, this is the same guy that was told by Donna Arduin that we were out of money. She said that, and he said that was the wrong answer. But here we are. Here we are, out of money.
So this is an amazingly difficult situation we are in.
This is Gary Stevens, who I'm getting more and more convinced. Well, I'll let his words speak.
So this is an amazingly difficult situation we are in, and we're asking pretty much impossible things of our finance committee. We know that we've got oil prices going down. It could be somewhere in the mid-60s, possibly, or more. We know that we have contracts that we knew they were coming. We didn't know how much it would be, possibly within the $45 or more million range. We know that the federal government may be cutting. We understand they may be cutting up to 5%, maybe more. So there's just a lot of unknowns right now, Mark. I think we simply can't ask those questions.
We simply can't ask those questions. A lot of unknowns. We simply can't ask those questions.
We simply can't ask those questions this time. Senator Stedman.
We simply can't ask the. And again, this is where Stedman goes on to say, "Well, we shouldn't focus on this.
Of head.
We should. This is what we should."
Senator
do.
Stedman.
Well, the Senate President listed off of a series of headwinds that we're facing. And I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena.
I don't want the public to dwell on that because, then they might ask the question, well, how did we get here and how do we get out? They may ask more Becky Borer questions like, how do we guarantee that this is going to, continue to happen? How do we do that?
So that's what we're.
Senator Stevens, President Stevens.
And then Kathy Giesel gets involved. Oh, we didn't even hear from her yesterday, but she's already planning on the next steps, folks. Already planning on the next steps, the next evolution of what they're going to do for our money.
Thank you, Senator Stedman. Senator Giesel.
Senator Stevens, President Stevens outlined the challenges along with Senator Stedman. One thing they didn't mention is the Permanent Fund Corporation earning reserve account is forecast to be jeopardized in terms of having enough money in it to even put out a percent of market value that we've been expecting.
You might remember that part of the reason why they don't have enough money in there is because of the ad hoc transfers championed by the aforementioned Senator Stedman. $8 billion that was transferred out of the ERA in 3 different transfers. That's one of the reasons why they don't have enough. This is a crisis of their own making in this regard to this component, but it was all on purpose. Why? Oh, she's going to tell you why.
To be jeopardized in terms of having enough money in it to even put out a percent of market value that we've been expecting every year. They're paying 60, it's paying 60% now of our general fund, right? Our unrestricted general fund. So in the next 3-4 years, that liability, that chance of not having enough funding there is becoming very real. We need to do something to modernize the Permanent Fund Corporation and how
I love that phraseology because otherwise it's antiquated, right? It's antiquated. We need to modernize it, to bring it up to what everybody else is doing. Otherwise, it's just ancient and old and decrepit. This is what words matter, folks. She may be a weasel, but she is very good at talking about this stuff. Words matter.
We need to do something to modernize the Permanent Fund Corporation and how that fund is structured as well, which is another big lift. And so I do hope the public is paying attention. I do hope that they understand the gravity of the place that we're in.
Thank you.
This is all a sales pitch for SJR 14. Rob can correct me if I'm wrong. SJR 14, which is the combining of the ERA into the corpus of the fund. Why? Because that's the next big pot of money. That's the next big, because folks, they understand there's not much left of the permanent fund dividend. That's gone. That's gone. So they're already looking to the horizon for the next cookie jar that they can raid.
Thank you, Senator Giesel. Please, Senator Keel. Even Keel, yes.
Briefly.
Okay. This is Keel responding to Sabatini's question on, well, what does a $2 billion cut look like? And again, this is one of those this is what in arguments, Socratic debate, they call this reducto reductum, which is reduction to the ridiculous, right? This is Jesse Keel's. Couldn't find it anywhere else, but here's what he has to say.
Mr. President, I think it points to the need also to look at the revenue side of the picture, because while we should always look for the most efficient possible ways to deliver government services, and we should always be in conversation with Alaskans about whether there are things we don't necessarily need the government to do. When we talk about a permanent fund dividend in the $1,000, $1,100 range, it's about $650, $700 million.
Which begs the question: does he think that that's something that we need to do? See how he juxtaposed those two things? When we look at things that we really need to do, he's holding it up. Is it something that we really need to do?
$700 million is the unrestricted general fund in the smallest 11, maybe 12 departmental budgets. I say departmental, I include branches of government. So to get that kind of savings, just starting from the bottom, you'd close the entirety of the Department of Commerce. Military and Veterans Affairs, we just wouldn't do that anymore. Environmental conservation, labor, workforce development, the governor's office, Department of Revenue, Department of Natural Resources, Department of Fish and Game, whole Department of Law, the entirety of the legislature, all of the Department of Administration, and probably about half the judicial branch to get to that level. That's $700 million.
See how they're pitting the PFD against basic government services. Those are the lowest departments. That's what he did. He started at the departments with the smallest budget. He never looked at the big picture stuff, education, Medicaid, those kind of things, where we could find big chunks of money out, cut out of there. But again, this is, again, the reducto ridiculum right there.
Thank you for that reality check, Senator.
Oh, it's a reality check. Oh, thank you for that reality.
Thank you for that reality check, Senator. Yes, please. No, yes, go ahead.
This is when Jeff Landfield asked the question, and you can see the look on Steven's face when he's like, okay, yes, telling his guy, who's the next guy? And then he sees Jeff Landfield and he's like, no, but I got to be honest. I kind of like Landfield's style. I really do. Anyway, here it is.
Yes, please. No, yes, go ahead, please.
Am I restricted or? I wanted to ask about the FY25 deficit, and unless I'm mistaken, there's no mechanism right now, and I think it's about 190 or 200 million dollars. So, how are you going to fund that? Is it a CBR thing? And I know the House is more.
He's talking about the deficit. He's talking about the supplemental budget, the 200 million in supplemental budget.
How are you going to fund that? Is it a CBR thing? And I know the House is more difficult with the threshold for the votes required to do that.
Thank you.
The supplementary budget, which is for those watching, is the budget adjustments for this current fiscal year that ends the end of June. Ballpark around 200 million. Those items were delivered to us from the administration, from the governor. I think we added 4 or 5 million, maybe 5 million for fire in the Senate. It's being split. There's a capital budget and the operating budget, of course. So the supplementary budget, we split in half. We took the capital to the capital budget for FY27 as a vehicle to carry it.
All right. I just realized that I got so wrapped up in this that I'm running late. So we're going to pick this up on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Sorry about that, man. I'm getting so wrapped up in this whole thing. I got distracted. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back with more. Don't go anywhere. Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Your mental suppository. The Michael Duke Show.
This is like 6 minutes late. I just realized I got so wrapped up in this. I'm like, holy cow, I got to go. Anyway, guys. I mean, come on. Kathy Giesel, the thinly veiled attack on the on the permanent fund itself and on the PFD. This is where can you see it? I mean, they're rubbing their, I can't wait. They're rubbing their hand. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Look at that big juicy pot of money. Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Right? They just can't wait to get their hands on that money. They just can't wait.
Say please.
I mean, they are really ready to get their hands on that big pot of money. And that's what they're pushing for next, because they've exhausted pretty much all of the other avenues. That is the last gasp. If they get access, if they combine the funds, if they are able to shove the ERA and modernize it, if they're able to shove the ERA into the corpus, they're going to have they'll have smooth sailing for 10 years. Smooth sailing for 10 years. They'll just keep drawing down the fund balance until the point to where it's diminishing returns. And then that just, and by that time, they won't care. By that time, I asked a question of somebody in Juneau the other day, because I told them, I said, I'm a little frustrated. I'm a little depressed about what's going on. I'm a little, it's just like, how do we do, and I said, how can these folks not see what's coming and what's on the horizon? And the genuine reaction from this person who's, in Juneau behind the scenes, fly on the wall, watching all this stuff, was they don't care. They live on the gravy train and don't know how to make a living or get reelected without all the government dough. So they'll ride this plane all the way into the ground and then bail completely to another state. They just don't. You know what? That's the only answer that makes sense, is that they really don't care. Because in the end, they've got a parachute and a ripcord and they can pull it and go somewhere else. They're going to ride the gravy train, the power train, all the way out to the end. I mean, wow. All right. Yeah. Michael says, modernize it. LMAO. It's the code for a feel-good word for stealing more from anywhere they can and sticking you with the bill. I mean, that's what's going on. And yeah, Brian, right. Brian said that's a pretty sad commentary. You're right. It is a sad commentary from somebody who's been in Juneau for years and who understands who's watching it. I mean, I was just like, give me some good news. Come on, man, give me some good news. Tell me what does it look like? And the bottom line is they just don't care. They're riding the gravy train to power. Yesterday, Rob Myers tried to, again, just remove $10 million worth of unfilled positions. And they said no. They're willing to cut your PFD, money that would go into your pocket, that would, undoubtedly, without nobody can debate, would affect the private sector and help Alaskans. And they said no to cutting unfunded positions because those folks in government might need those funds sometime for something else, whether it's hiring more employees, and they don't want to have them come back and, ask permission for more funding, or using it for a slush fund for overtime for their current employees or whatever. They will, no, they just, no. Which again, just proves what my source in Juneau is basically saying. It just proves what's going on. They don't care. They live on the gravy train and don't know how to make a living or get reelected without all the government dough. So they'll ride that plane all the way into the ground, and then they'll bail out completely to another state. Or live on the largesse that they've collected by being in the legislature for 30 years and getting that big, juicy retirement paycheck that none of the rest of us are getting. paid for by us.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
It's amazing how long this takes. I mean, it is. We'll get through it. I mean, it's a 26-minute presser, and I'm like, oh, we'll get through the rest of this in an hour, and I'm still only 18 minutes into it. Okay, so we're obviously not going to finish everything up this hour. I'm gonna pick back up at the top of the hour with the remainder of this, and then we'll do it. But we were just talking in the chat room during the break, and some of the commentary from some of the listeners there, kind of triggered me to something that had happened earlier this week. I got people that I know in Juneau, and I'm asking behind the scenes questions. What's the feel? What's going on? What does it feel like? Everything else, and hold on a second, Brett. And I said, how does it feel? What's going on down there? And I told him, I expressed my concern. I expressed my frustration, saying, how can we continue this way? How can these folks not see what is coming? And his answer, the guy who's been down in Juneau for years, who's watched behind the scenes, who's seen all this stuff, says they don't care. They live on the gravy train and don't know how to make a living or get reelected without all the government dough. So they will ride the plane all the way into the ground and then bail completely to another state. That's it. They don't. That could be the only answer as to why, when I say, how can these folks not see this coming? How can they not see what's going to be happening? How can they not see it? And he's like, well, it's because they don't care, which means they do see it, but they're going to milk it out until they absolutely can't milk it out anymore, which makes more sense now with Bert Stedman saying, well, we're going to hold that back for an even rainier day. I mean, rainier. I mean, it's a Force 5 hurricane outside, but an even rainier day, we'll just save it up for that. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is the direction that we're going, and I honestly do not know how to stop it. I mean, I thought by bringing this up and getting people motivated and agitated and irritated and all that kind of stuff, I thought that would, but you just obviously cannot make this up. I don't know how to fix it. I wish I did. I wish I could wave my magic wand. I'd be a benevolent dictator. I'm just saying. All right, we got more coming up. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return more after this.
try it again.
All right. Brett Rottermund is joining us right now. Why? Well, because I forgot that I got so wrapped up in this press conference stuff, I forgot he was coming on. And so this is me. This is my bad show host is part of the problem. So you with us? Brett?
Yep, I am here.
Okay, good. All right. So we're going to bring Brett on here and talk about. Damn, I hate changing gears like this. We're going to talk about his run for the Borough Assembly, where he's probably experiencing some of the for re-election, where he's probably experiencing some of exactly the same things in the local levels that folks are experiencing down in Juneau. But basically, there's just folks there that just don't care. They just want the power. They just want to get it. They just want to do what they got. It's all about the power and keeping it on track there. So we're going to pull here. I'm just looking for. I thought I had a picture of Brett here on my deal because he can't. Apparently, something's wrong with the link for him to get on board. All right, so Brett, I'll be back to you here in just a second, and don't go anywhere. We're going to be back with. We're going to figure all this out. Okay. Man, sorry. There we go. I was looking for the pictures and the images and everything else. Okay. All right. We're going to get Brett squared away here. I got his picture now. I got his picture. So we'll put that in the into the screen so that everybody can see it. Everybody knows who we're talking to. Yada yada yada. And then we'll get back to this. Okay. And boom. Okay. All right. So I will also get caught up in the chat room. I can't stretch this stuff out. Tomorrow's Firearms Friday. I cannot stretch this out into tomorrow, but we'll spend a good 2 segments with Brett here, and maybe we'll finish up at the end of the hour with the final stuff for the press conference. So there we go. All right. Taking a look at some of the comments there. There we go. All right. I'm doing 3 things, folks. You know how badly I suck at that sometimes. Let's get this squared away. All right, there we go. All right, got it. Go back to the comments. As Miguel just said, as a private citizen, in your opinion, Brett, right? As a private citizen, because that's the thing now, is that they got everybody down there. They got the freaking the opinion Nazis down there in or up in Fairbanks, who are, if you don't absolutely say, this is my own private opinion, they'll immediately say, well, you're trying to express your opinion for the entire Borough Assembly because, I mean, okay. It's some of the most ridiculous stuff I've ever seen, but this is how they roll. This is how they roll down there. All right. So Brett's on the line. We're going to jump in with Brett here in just a minute. Again, we'll take him for a couple segments, and then we'll go and jump over to our final thoughts on this press conference, because there's still some hot stuff in there that I want to get into, and we will continue on. So, okay, more comments here. Sorry. Senator Shower threw 2 PFD increase amendments out, then pulled them out before the vote so the worms couldn't count votes as rhinos and vote for an increased PFD, knowing it would fail. Well, this is probably a good idea. You guys have been talking about the anti-dragger, is that the anti-trawler legislation? Apparently, it's been stuck down in committee. Nobody wants to hear it. Kevin says, write an email to house.fisheries@akleg.gov and tell them to bring the bill HB 203 up for a hearing. Every bill deserves a hearing. So they're sitting on that as well. Melissa said, it makes me wonder when people will start to vote better. I don't think they're going to. I mean, it's the whole vote harder thing, right? How are you going to vote harder? People aren't even paying attention to what's going on, most of them. I don't know. Again, this is like I said, I don't have an answer for you. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere. I don't understand. Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
Sounds just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. Welcome back to hour 2 of the show for Thursday. We were just going through this press conference still. I was going to carry it over, but I forgot because I'm a bad radio host. I'm bad at my job sometimes. I forgot that I had invited Brett Rodermund. I can't remember how he pronounces it. He'll tell me in a second. Anyway, Bulletproof Brett up onto the show to talk about his candidacy for re-election at the Fairbanks North Star Borough up in Fairbanks. He is an assembly member right now, part of the cadre that's been trying to hold back the size and scope of government in Fairbanks, which has been it was a losing proposition before I left Fairbanks. I remember when I got on the assembly, it was pretty split, like a 4-5 split, or even a 4-4 with some moderates in the middle. By the time I left, there was only 2 conservative voices left on the assembly, me and Lance Roberts. And it was going downhill fast from there. So, I mean, I admire folks who jump back on there. They're trying to bring back some balance to the assembly. They fought some tough fights, and they got more coming up. So without further ado, let's jump on over to him and get a chance to talk to Brett Rodermund here about what's happening at the FNSB in the assembly. Good morning, Brett. How are you, my friend?
Good morning. Sorry to kind of slow down your thunder there, and I don't need a whole lot of time if you want to get back to that because it's pretty interesting stuff. But,
no, that's my fault, not your fault, Brett. So I don't feel bad about it. It was just one of those things where it was kind of jarring, where I was like, I'm in a roll, and then oh man, I forgot totally. What an idiot!
Right. Well, yeah, get back to that stupid local politics stuff again.
No. Well, you know what? That's the thing. It's not stupid. That's the thing. The local politics are the things we have control over. You're proof positive of that, right? I mean, you're proof positive of what can happen when people get involved at the local level. I remember when you first wanted to run, you called me and we talked about it. And I said the same thing that I've told many people when they call and ask me about running. This is the place where you can make the most difference, is in your community. You can make the most difference in your cities, in your boroughs. Then you get to the state, and that's about the extent of our real influence these days, is in state politics. Everything beyond that is kind of out of our control. But where we need to focus is right here in our own communities. And you've done a pretty hardy job of trying to protect us from what's going on out there. So tell me a little bit here about you're coming up. The election is in October.
October 7th. Yep.
October 7th. So tell me, as you look back, first of all, for folks who are in Fairbanks and don't know who Brett Rodermund is, can you give us a little bit of background and then tell us what you've done for your last, over the last couple of years. What are the fights been inside the borough? What should we be paying attention to?
Right. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I've going on 34-year resident of Alaska. Moved here in 1991. Been pretty much a business owner my entire time here in Fairbanks. Currently own Bulletproof Trailers. I think we're going on 18 plus years now with that business. Yeah, and then a couple of years ago, I went clinically insane and decided to run for public office. One of my first phone calls was to you, where you tried to coach me through, probably not running, but instead I decided to jump in. So this is a kind of a funny one. So you say, well, what are your big accomplishments? What have you done? And the honest answer to that is pretty much nothing other than trying to hold back some of the craziness that's going on. I remember election night, the last go around when I won, and Representative Prox was there to congratulate everybody. And Mike and I were talking, and I remember him saying, he's like, never forget that all politics are local. He said, you got to understand that all this craziness, all the stuff that we deal with in Juneau, it all starts at the local level. It starts there, and then it moves its way south to Juneau. And I really do believe that's true.
Yeah.
So, and right now, our big ticket item right now is the budget. And as I was listening to your show, earlier, it was really funny because you were really on a rant, and I thought to myself, wow, all we have to do is change the names and the dollar amounts of what you were ranting about. And you were talking about the Fairbanks North Star Borough.
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
The only difference was the names and the dollars. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and look, when you say, I really have accomplished nothing, I would argue that, just because I was in the borough assembly for almost 6 years. And I look back at it, and I think I may have sponsored one piece of legislation in 5 or 6 years, but I held the line as best I could. I was able to, my one thing that I felt good about was able to empower the road service areas. As the RSAC commissioner, I was the chair of the RSAC committee. I felt like I was able to empower the local road service areas to be able to kind of manifest their own destiny instead of having the borough look over their shoulder. That was my one accomplishment, that and trying to hold the line. Holding the line is doing something. And that's hard, especially in an assembly with the makeup that you guys have had over the last 10 years down there. I mean, the makeup of the assembly is pretty is pretty blue. Let's just put it that way. It changed a lot from when I was there, and that's got to be a tough gig.
Yeah, I mean, my second year, it was just me and Barbara Haney were the only ones to try to hold the line. Not much you can do with 2 votes. And yeah, oftentimes that's what you feel like you're doing, is you're just trying to hold things back a little bit. In this particular budget, the proposed budget from the mayor was going to institute a $9.5 million draw on our savings account. Now, tonight is the big vote. This is the last chance for any amendments. The finance committee has thrown their amendments at this thing. I don't think many of them are going to stick. I think they're going to be reverted tonight, and we're probably going back to a large draw on our savings account in order to balance this thing. We'll have to wait and see how things play out. But again, it was just so interesting listening to you earlier. It's literally the exact same thing. It's just the dollar figures are different. At the local level, we talk about millions and occasionally tens of millions. At the state level, it's always tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and now we're into the billions.
Right.
But in the end, it's all the same. It's relative. It's just the size and scope of government.
Yeah, and so, what's gone on down in Fairbanks and or up at Fairbanks is again a microcosm of what's happening in other areas. I watched this living in Wasilla and working in Anchorage, I watched the Anchorage budget just balloon up and balloon up and balloon up. And now we're talking about $500 million budget for people, for 270,000 people. The Fairbanks North Star boroughs actually lost population, and yet their budget continues to balloon. When I left, I think the budget was at $142 million. What's the annual budget this year, Brett?
The proposed budget was right at 207 million. 207, and we've trimmed that back. The finance committee trimmed it back $2.5–3 million. But again, I think some of that trimming is going to go away tonight because we had proposed some rather large cuts that are not obviously sitting well with the community. One was the Joy Community Center, which used to be Joy School, which was handed back to us when the school district was forced to close that school. And it was turned into a community center that's really not been utilized, in my opinion. Then Mary Sy was one of the potential cuts. And then we also discussed cutting the Carlson Center as well. And the interesting thing about the cuts was the cuts were not all brought by the conservative members of the finance committee. Joy was brought forth by Liz Reeves Ramos, and Mary Sy was brought forth by Mindy O'Neill. So it was kind of an across the board look at the budget. And of course, now we're all evil people, wanting to get rid of all this stuff. And that's not really the case. We're looking at some pretty grim numbers here. And even if we don't cut this stuff, I think we have to have the discussion. I think this community has kind of come to a crossroads. Are we bringing in enough revenue to support the borough? The answer to that, in my opinion, is yes. But we're all the way to the revenue cap. But the deal is, as everybody out there knows, your money is worth far less than it used to be.
Right.
So in my opinion, we're bringing in enough money. It just doesn't go very far anymore. My first year on the assembly, it was amazing. Our staff is pretty good at projecting costs of projects, but they got caught up when everything just started to balloon up, and they were telling us, well, this project will be $500,000. And then we get our bids back, and the lowest bid might be like $1.2 million. So it's taken a while to kind of catch up, but you can kind of see all these projects that we do have now doubled, or in some cases tripled in price. Well, that kind of pulls away at the amount of money that's coming in. And then remember, the mayor, any mayor, in your first budget or any budget you're doing, you automatically start off your $3 million in the hole. And that $3 million comes from our employees, from the contract negotiations, any wages increases, step increases, benefit increases.
Right. Automatic.
You start off
automatic escalators that are baked in. You have no control over it. They're automatically going to go up.
Right. Yeah. You can't. So what you have to do is hope that your revenue follows that. Well, if you look back, and even probably your time on the assembly, I think probably the revenue stream followed in a somewhat linear fashion the budget of the assembly. But now what I see is a split. We've got the revenue coming in. The problem is you got all these dollar bills that are being dumped onto the borough. Wheelbarrow loads of dollar bills are being brought in, but they're all worthless. The dollar bills don't have any value anymore. And so, here we are.
Right.
And at that point, you only got two choices. You've either got to downsize, or you're going to have to bring in more revenue somehow or another.
Right.
So
and that's got its own perils already. Again, the cost of living in the interior is huge, and people are struggling. And if you have to bring in more revenue, that means increased tax assessments and higher taxes and everything else. Maybe it's a sales tax. I don't know what it is, but if they're looking for more revenue, the problem again goes back to, like you said, it's parallel to what's happening in the state. Do we have a revenue problem, or do we have a spending problem? When you're talking about the increase to the budget of $60+ million over the course of 10 years, 12 years that I've been gone, and the population's even lower than when I left, you've got some issues, right? I mean, this is a big deal. Now, I want to talk. We're coming up on the break here, but I mean, there's some big projects in there that aren't necessarily necessary. And I'm looking at this $33 million fee for this for the Puppy Palace, right? The new animal shelter that they're talking about. I guess that's still on the table. That's still being funded, but we're in the hole. We can't maintain the buildings that you've got right now in the interior. What so think about that. I'm going to take the break, but think about that, and we'll return with that question in just a minute. Brett Rottermund is our guest. He's a Fairbanks North Starborough Assembly member running for re-election. Of course, all the opinions expressed by Brett are his and his alone. They do not reflect the will of the Assembly. We have to make sure that we say that so that he doesn't face some kind of ethics violation as well. All right, we'll be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right, Brett Rottermund is our guest here on the program talking about this local government stuff. I mean, I always found it, one of the things that I found irritating, and we're about to get into the whole deferred maintenance thing and everything else, Brett, but when I was on the Assembly, they just treated that like it was a nothing burger. And I kept going on and on about this. And I remember we finally got the school board that they have a deferred maintenance fund that they were just kind of stashing money in, but they weren't using it. And they kept coming back to the borough and saying, hey, we need more money for our facility. And I had worked with the attorney at the time, who was amazing, Renee Broker. You guys wish you still had her there. And she, they pulled through it and they found the thing, and they're like, well, this fund could be used. And it was just like shocking that they were like, well, wait, you want us to use the fund that's specifically set up for maintenance fund to actually fund maintenance? We want, that's our rainy day account, right? I mean, that was kind of the reaction to what was going on. And it's so infuriating to see all these different buckets of money out there that are being used, not necessarily for the intended purpose. And that's been frustrating to watch.
Yeah. Now, of course, when you were on the Assembly, we didn't have the current KIP program, our capital improvement program. And so now I think we have a much better avenue for capital projects. But in my opinion, that has been, it's gotten out of hand. It's gotten to this pie in the sky projects, and it's not being used for our deferred maintenance. Now it's being used for new stuff. Well, why are we building new stuff when we can't even maintain or afford our old stuff? And our old stuff,
right.
If you look, and I don't think Fairbanks is unique. I've never lived anyplace else in the state, so I don't know, but because you have ties to Fairbanks. If you look at all of our infrastructure here, the stuff was all built mostly back in the 80s, the 90s. Some of it goes way back, but it was built when the money situation was much different, especially during the pipeline days when money was no object. So we built all this stuff. We never, typical government, they build it, but never have a plan to maintain it. And so Here we are. We have all these aging buildings now that have a lot of maintenance issues. And again, we're kind of at the point where we've got too much month at the end of the money,
Yeah, well, and I one of the most satisfying things to me after I left was that I later on had a conversation with then Mayor Carl Castle, who'd been on the Assembly with me, and he basically had told me in not the same, but paraphrasing, he basically said, you're right, because he was the one that ended up doing the deep dive and found that there was $270 million in deferred maintenance in the borough. That if they wanted to bring everything up to code and spec and do everything and do what they'd been putting off, that they had $250 million in deferred maintenance for a community of less than 100,000 people. And he was just shocked. He was just shocked because I was like, this is going to bite us. This is going to bite us. And everybody just kind of nodded and like, oh, it's just Dukes going off and being Dukes again. But he's like, yeah, he goes, you were right. $250 million in deferred maintenance for things that we supposedly had paid for, but weren't paying on keeping up. And how are we supposed to add more when we can't keep up with what we have right now?
Yeah, well, I'll paint an even grimmer picture. Recently, it came out in some of our committee meetings that just our school district, just the school district buildings that, remember, we own, the borough owns, that they are projecting $367 million in deferred maintenance just on the school buildings alone. Not the rest of the borough buildings, just the school district buildings.
Hold the line. My head is about to explode. Just don't go anywhere. We're gonna continue here in just a second. Brett Rottermund is our guest. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Here we go.
The Michael Dukes Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
We're continuing now with Brett Rottermund, who's the Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly member here, talking about his re-election campaign. And we're going to get to that here in just a second, but we're kind of recapping some of the big things that have changed since I was on the Assembly, which wasn't that long ago, only 10 years ago. One of the biggest, pet peeves that I had during my entire time on the Assembly was this continued discussion of deferred maintenance, of which I would completely, I'd lose my mind and tell people this is going to eat us alive. We shouldn't do this. This is wrong. And I was just mentioning that after I left, I did have a conversation with then Mayor Carl Castle, who was like, you were right. He'd done a deep dive and found that there was $270 million worth of deferred maintenance in the borough that was necessary. So that would have been almost 10 years ago now that he and I had that conversation, because it was just a couple years after I left. And he's like, this is going to eat us alive. And now Brett is telling me it's getting even worse. They've got a new program called KIP, which is a capital improvement program, which was ostensibly, was that supposed to be used for deferred maintenance and other things, Brett? And now it's being misused?
Well, in my opinion, and I guess I should actually state this, these opinions are mine alone, do not represent the Fairbanks North Star Borough, nor the Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly there. Now we're legal. I didn't want you to have to do that for me. So the KIP program was, I believe the spirit of the KIP was to start to chip away at some of this deferred maintenance stuff. But instead, it's kind of turned into, well, let's build a bunch of new stuff. And, my opinion is, why are we building new stuff if we can't maintain our old stuff? We've got a proven track record of not being able to take care of our current facilities. Why do we need to build new stuff, especially when we're starting to dip into our savings account,
right,
in order to balance the budget? And to kind of put it in perspective here, our current fund balance, I believe, is sitting at around $47 million. That's our savings account, but we have a target reserve by code. A certain percentage of that must remain as a target reserve. That current number sits at around $27 million. Okay, so if we draw tonight, let's just say things actually get bumped up a little bit. Let's round off. So if we draw tonight $10 million from savings, now we've drawn it down to $37 million. Well, what do you think is going to happen next year? Everything's probably going to remain pretty flat. There's no really big things on the horizon for Fairbanks. I think we're closer to an in-state gas line than we've ever been, but we're not there. So we don't see any big buildup. So our revenue's probably going to remain flat,
right,
for the most part. So next year, guess what? You're going to be facing a similar budget. So if you draw $10 million next year, guess where you're at? 27 million. Well, 27 million by code is supposed to be zero. That's when you've ran out of money. That's your target reserve. You're not supposed to go below that. So, here we are. We can kick, and this is what I'm trying to get through to the community and to the people. It's like, guys, you can't. The state's been kicking this can down the road for decades. Everything's kind of come to a head here in the interior. The way we're at right now, you can only kick this can down the road 2-3 years, and then you're done. You're out of money. So. But yes, I just think this capital improvement program should be used for other things rather than these pie in the sky projects. The most famous one obviously is the animal control shelter, and that has a projected price tag of $33 million. Now remember, that's $33 million today. If this doesn't happen, if it doesn't happen and we drag this down there, remember when this started 10 years ago, the projected cost was $17 million and everybody was flipping out.
Right.
Now we're at 33 million and everybody's flipping out. Where are we going to be in 5 years?
Right.
I guarantee it's not going to be $33 million. So,
yeah. Well, and then you pointed out during the break, that, not to poo-poo my $270 million in deferred maintenance money number, but you said, well, that you guys just uncovered in one of the committee meetings that the deferred maintenance on the school buildings alone, which are all owned by the borough, but they're part of the borough infrastructure. There's a new number there, and it's what is it? 300 and what?
$367 million is what was reported.
306 in deferred maintenance on buildings that we already own.
Right. Yeah, and some of this has almost bit us in the butt. We recently had to do an emergency appropriation to get the boilers replaced at the North Pole High School because they were literally failing. And the other interesting thing that I've learned and starting to ask around and start to ask questions. Our borough staff is not going into the school buildings to do regular inspections to try to figure out where we're at. We entrust that to the school district, which is fine. I have no problem with that. They have their people that can take care of this, and they're working on their improvements. They're supposed to come to us and provide us input in where we need to be with these buildings, but our folks are not going behind them and verifying the information that we're getting. And I see that as a problem. I mean, we own the buildings. We're the landlords. If you're the landlords, you're probably going to go in and inspect your property at least once a year,
right,
and make sure that our tenants, right, in air quotes, are doing what they're supposed to be doing, or the information we're getting is correct. And this stuff has a habit of, it can kind of spin out of control. The North Pole Boiler Project was one of them that had been proposed in the capital improvement program, but it had been lumped into this bigger project that was like $10 million. Well, $10 million, we put in about $11 or $12 million into the KIP every year. So one $10 million project sort of wipes us out. You see what I'm saying?
Right, right.
So what we did recently, and it was kind of an accidental group effort between me and Barbara Haney, was we modified our KIP process so that the school district has a seat at the table during the KIP process. And then the other big one is we changed the language so that you don't have to take these giant projects as a whole. The administration, the staff, the school district can cherry pick out of these projects. So the North Pole project was a classic example, $10 million to completely upgrade the mechanical room. But the deal was the boilers were failing. The rest of the stuff is old and they're jury rigging it to make it work, but they can make it work. But here's the gig. If the boilers go down and it's 40 below zero, it doesn't matter. All the air handling equipment, it doesn't matter. Your building's still frozen. So if we had the process we have now, you could have gone in there and said, okay, what in the mechanical room, what's the critical thing here? And it could have been brought out, say, well, the boilers they're dying. we're going to lose them here pretty quick. We could have appropriated that money out of the KIP. Instead, we had to do an emergency appropriation,
right?
In order to replace these boilers before we lost them. So,
well, yeah, I mean, this is an ongoing problem, and it's the short-sightedness, I think, of the bureaucracies and the bodies like the Assembly that is contributed to a lot of this. I know you guys are fighting back against that. Brett, why do you want to continue with this madness? I mean, why run for re-election? Just give me the, give me the short version here.
So the short version is, believe it or not, with all the trials and tribulations and the ups and downs, for some reason, and I can't explain it, I actually enjoy this. I really do. I really do enjoy being part of the process. I like to have a voice. I hope I've been a voice of common sense and reason on this body, trying to keep people grounded, trying to keep people in the community, engaged and hopefully encouraging them to get involved. But believe it or not, I really do like being part of the process. It's a huge learning curve. I'm still learning. I think you'll always be learning. It's just a huge thing to undertake. But the long and short of it is, I do enjoy this, and I'd love another shot at it. And I'm not really looking forward to campaigning. I'll be honest. I don't enjoy that part of the process. I really don't. But I'm willing to do it. If the folks are willing to give me another shot at this thing. So,
well, Brett, I mean, I hope that, we need people in there who will stand in the gap, who will be the stumbling block to the inexorable growth of government. Is there a chance tonight? Is there a chance for public testimony before the final bill tonight, or is this just tell me what's going on?
No. So the public testimony was last Thursday. That was our chance. So if you look at our agenda, there's pretty much the only thing on there is the budget. This is the Assembly members' final chance for the final amendments and the final push. At the end, hopefully, we get through it tonight. At the end, we vote on the budget, and then that's it. The process. Yeah. We move on. We move on from there.
We move on. Yeah. And this $33 million, that's already locked in stone. There's no way to pull back on that. Is that already in the planning?
Well, it is in the KIP. It's been allocated. It has been basically pushed out. The project has been pushed out because we knew there was no way. We don't have the 33 million. We set aside 16 million, basically half of it. And then we were going to ask the legislature for help on that. Well, everybody knows where that's going to go. That's just, the legislature doesn't have a capital budget either. So there's no money there. So basically that project has been put on hold, if you will. And of course, when you put these projects on hold, what happens to the costs? They just continue to rise, exponentially.
But I guess the bigger question is it something that we really need? Is it nice to have, or is it a must have? Right. I mean, that's kind of the big question here in the long run. Is it nice to have, or is it a must have? Brett, right. If folks want to support you, if they want to, are you doing a fundraiser? Are you taking donations, volunteers? What are you doing?
Yeah, we got a big kickoff fundraiser this next week, the 17th, from 3 to 5. It's going to be at Jeans Chrysler, so that's sort of the kickoff to the campaign. We sent out a couple hundred letters for this, but we're inviting people, on Facebook. I do have a website. It's brettforassembly.com. You can also follow me on Facebook. Yes, I'm back on social media. That was another part of the campaign thing I don't like. 15 years I was banned from the Zuck, and I'm back. I'm back with Zuckerberg again, and I cringe every time I get on there. And I've certainly commented on that. I despise social media, but I am unfortunately back on there. So
sometimes you got to follow me there. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, right? That's it is.
You got to do what you got to do.
That's right.
So.
And Miguel and Audrey in the chat room are saying both District 31 and District 33 are endorsing you for re-election. So that's some good news. Hopefully we can keep a good conservative voice on the Assembly. We need it. We need more balance. We need more balance on the Assembly to be able to try and hold back, because otherwise it's just going to keep growing. I mean, $207 million. It's mind-boggling compared to where we were at when I left. So, and I'm still a borough taxpayer. I still own property in the borough, so I'm still paying the bill for part of that stuff. And I don't. I hope we can keep the costs. I hope we can keep the costs down. Brett, final thoughts here before I let you go.
Just thank you for the time. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully tonight will go well. We'll get through this budget thing, and we'll move forward and keep up the fight. And hopefully, Barbara and I can get reelected. We've got a third seat that's open. It's going to be wide open. We've got a member that's terming out. So, if anybody's interested in running, certainly give me a call. I'm happy to talk to you if you're interested in running. We'd love to fill that seat with another conservative voice. So
yeah, that would help bring balance back to the assembly for sure. If you had that conservative,
Definitely.
if you had that voice, that's what we need to do. Is bring that that balance back to where it was before. That's the only way to kind of hold the line as it goes. So, Brett, thank you so much for coming on board, my friend. I appreciate it. Thank you for being part of it today. And good luck. Let us know as you get closer. We'll have you back on and we'll talk more about it.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thanks for coming on board. Hold the line for a second, Brett. All right, folks, we are out of time. One more segment coming up. I'm going to go ahead and open up the phone lines in the next segment. Somebody was asking in the chat room, so I'll open up the phone lines and we'll summate with some final thoughts today. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, final bite at the apple for Brett. Brett, you want to any final thoughts here before we let you go for folks? Any final appeals, et cetera, et cetera?
No, just if folks aren't doing anything on the 17th between 3 and 5, love to see you down at Jeans Chrysler. Good chance to do some meet and greet stuff, and get to hear. Always good to hear folks' concerns.
Yep.
And I think one of my favorite parts of this job is trying to keep people informed and engaged, because you get so much of this information that's flying around, and a lot of times what I've discovered is and you probably experienced this when you were on the assembly, it's like a half truth. They're getting some of the information, but not all. I really enjoy trying to keep people informed as to what's really going on, because I think if you just communicate with people some of this information, it just dispels a lot of the myths that are going on with this. So
well, I appreciate it, Brett. Thank you for coming on, and good luck, my friend. Like I said, don't hesitate to give me a call if something else comes up, or we'll get you back on before the October 7th election. Brett Rotterman running for re-election at the FNSB in Fairbanks. But Tim just said, Mike, you don't live here. Just keep paying your taxes and shut up. That's what they That's what they want. They want us to just keep paying our taxes and shut up. That's what they want. All right. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you coming on board this morning.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Brett Rotterman, our guest here on the program this morning, as we get ready to go and continue on. All right. So phone lines are open. I'm going to go ahead and throw those wide right now. So if you folks if anybody wants to call in, somebody had asked a few minutes ago if the phone lines were open and ready to go. Oh, Tim was asking. So Tim, yep, you're welcome to call in. If you want to call in, now's the time to do it. The number to call, for those of you who are wondering, 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. $360 million in deferred maintenance for the schools alone in Fairbanks. I mean, I can't. What is the population of the borough is now? What, 90,000? Is that what it is? Something like that. It dropped. It was closer to 100,000 when I was there, but I think now it's down in the low 90s. But if we did 360 million divided by 95,000 people, don't worry, it's only $4,000 a person. It's only $4,000 a person that you're on the hook for just in the school district. Just in the school district. It's don't worry about it. It'll be fine. It'll all work out in the end, I'm sure, because we're too big to fail, and it won't matter. We'll just keep taking money out of the savings until there's nothing. That's the thing. It's monkey see, monkey do, right? We got the national level where the government just spends more than they take in. So the state just thinks, oh, we can just keep doing that until obviously you can't. And now the borough is like, oh, we'll just keep balancing the budget out of savings until we, never addressing the fact that the problem is the spend. The problem is the spend. Polly's just like, tax me harder, Daddy. Yes, that's what we're talking about. Tax me harder, Daddy. Yeah, 360 million, says Miguel, and they keep voting no for deferred maintenance. Okay. That because that makes real sense, that's the problem. All right. Harold he's been on this anti-Trump tirade all morning. Just like, he's not reading the room. He's not really listening to the program. He's just using it as a leap board to, although I'm just wondering if he thought Harris would be doing anything different, but that's one of those things. Whiz, bang, boom, my head just exploded, says Tim. Well, so I wasn't too wrong. 95,000. So I just 360 million. I just made him flat numbers, but it's about $4,000 per person, Miguel. That's what it would cost to take up the deferred maintenance. Would be $4,000 for every man, woman, and child in the borough. So if it's mom and dad and their 2.1 kids, don't worry. It would only take $20,000 of their money to square up the borough buildings in the school district alone. That's not talking about the other stuff. That's maybe they want to tear down the buildings with the most deferred maintenance and build new ones. Well, I wouldn't say that that's not part of their plan.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
$367 million in deferred maintenance for school buildings alone in the Fairbanks North Star Borough. We just did the math during the break. Don't worry, it's only $4,000 for every man, woman, and child in the borough. That would be there if they had to write a check today to take care of that deferred maintenance. That's all it is. Don't worry about it. That's only $20,000 if it's a mom and pop and two kids. That's only $20,000 or I'm sorry, $16,000 out of your household budget that you'd have to pay just to be able to maintain the buildings in the school alone. But don't worry about it. It'll be good. It'll be fine. And Chris asks, maybe they want to tear down the buildings with the most deferred maintenance and build new. That might be part of the thing. They would, they'd rather let the buildings fall down and then say, look, our building's broken. We need to tear it down and build a new one. That's going to, this is all going to come down to you, the people. You, the people, are going to have to pay for all this. And whether it's at the borough level or at the state level, you're going to be running around and they're going to start talking about how you're going to get taxed. You got to get taxed harder. Tax me harder, Daddy. That's what we're talking about. All right. We were talking about the press conference here with the Senate, which we got about 10 minutes here we can get through, but I've also opened up the phone line. So if anything today has triggered you, first of all, welcome to the party, pal. Second of all, if you want to sound off, now's the time to do it. 319-527-3864. We'll take some phone calls and see what you guys have to say as well before we jump back into this presser. I see that we've got Bill on the line. Let's go over here first, and we'll take Bill's call, see what he has to say. Good morning, Bill. What's on your mind?
Well, totally off your current subject and something, I guess, maybe a little bit positive, and that is I've got a very simple method of tapping birch trees because all I do is I use a for a container, I use a water jug, like a $1 water jug you buy it out shopping, and I use about a foot and a half of the tubing like you'll see in a espresso shop. It's clear tubing. It has kind of like a web of threads, kind of going on diagonals from each other,
right,
to kind of strengthen the tube. Okay?
Right. Okay.
And what I do is I take a foot and a half of that, or you have to just see your own situation, but I run that to a hole in the lid of the water jug there, okay? And I nest that water jug on the ground at the base of the tree, and I run the tube up to the point in the tree, usually about like a foot and a half or so up from the ground. You have to adjust because that's where the tree is a little bit it's arching out with its root system and so on. And anyway, then to drill the hole, what I use is a battery-operated drill motor with a Forstner bit. I prefer to use, after years of doing this, a 1-inch Forstner bit, and I run that into the tree at a diagonal. At a horizontal to the tree. Okay, so what I do is I basically just bend that tubing from the jug to the hole in the tree. You want to go below bark, and I think usually going in about a quarter inch or so past bark is all you need to do. I don't think you need to go any deeper than that. And the Forstner bit will give you a clean cut, and you'll you want to check to make sure that you get kind of a pretty nice square cut on your tubing. It's a little bit difficult to cut with a utility knife or a pocket knife or whatever, and get it perfectly straight. But you want to have a nice clean cut on that end that you put into the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in the in the seasons for the sap to be rising, which is going on now in the interior, then pretty soon you'll be hearing a drip, drip, drip in your water jug. And I recommend a tree that's about 8 inches in diameter, as loggers would say, breast high. In other words, if you're standing up near the tree, you want a tree that's about 8 inches in diameter at the height of your chest.
Right. Okay. And then you take it all out and you go make birch syrup with it. And then, Bill, you take it out and make birch syrup with it?
No, I just use it for drinking water. I make my herb tea and my coffee with that, and if I want some water for a water bottle, for a drink while you're doing a sports activity, then this stuff is great too.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about having bad tasting tap water.
Right. Okay. Well,
and it's a mild sweetness, so it's like if you put about a teaspoon of sugar in a cup of water, so it's not overwhelming at all. It's just very mildly sweet.
Well, that was a complete departure from what I was expecting, Bill, but I appreciate you giving folks the rundown on that. Thanks for sounding off this morning. Appreciate it. Thank you. I mean, it wasn't what I was expecting at all, but I guess we need to finish up the day with some good news. I mean, I don't know if there's any good news. All right, so let's I guess we'll recap for today because we don't have enough time to get much further into this. Although I will say that later on in this, wow, some deep rumbles there. Later on in this press conference, Kathy Giessel does come back on to talk about more about SJR 14 and how it needs to pass, which of course is the money grab from the corpus of the fund. And there's some other little bits and bobs in there, which I would love to get into. But, the bottom line, folks, is this. I don't know how to fix this because you have to have people who truly care about the long-term growth and stability of the state. And when I ask that question again to some of the folks that I talked to in Juneau, and the reaction came back of basically saying they don't care. They live on the gravy train and don't know how to make a living or get reelected without all the government's dough. So they'll ride the plane all the way into the ground and then bail to another state. That just showed me that this is not something that you can rationalize or you can fact your way out of, right? You could show them all the facts that they want, but if they just don't care, then facts doesn't matter. Facts don't count. And so that's a problem where I just don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to fix that. And I wish I had a solution other than what we've talked about before, which is changing the players, which we've done a good job of in this state. We've changed a lot of legislators out. The problem is we haven't changed out the ones who are actually driving the bus. We haven't changed out the ones that have been there for 30 or 40 years, who have been, Gary Stevens was bragging early on at one point in this press conference. He talks about, I've been here 25 years, and I know Lyman Hoffman is almost 40 years now. Bert Stedman's been in there for a couple decades. There's a lot of folks in there, especially the ones who are in control, who have been there for decades. So maybe changing out the players, more players is what needs to happen. But again, I don't know how you do that in places where the constituency is just fat, dumb, and happy. They just like it. They just keep reelecting Bert Stedman. They just keep reelecting Louise Stutes. They just keep reelecting Lyman Hoffman. I don't know what the answer to that is. So, I wish I could just say, this is how you do it. This is how you fix it. I guess the answer is you get people who actually care about the future of the state in the long term, who are willing to acknowledge that we've got hard choices to make now for the future prosperity of the state. All right, folks, we got to go. We'll see you guys tomorrow for Firearms Friday, the Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Yeah, your facts don't matter. Yeah, exactly. Sure, you could have done a biscuit recipe, Harold. I mean, you could have done it. Birch syrup. I mean, I'm all about birch syrup. I love me some birch syrup. Yeah, that's $4,000 per person we were talking about earlier on top of your current taxes. So there you go. That's what it's all about. All right, my friends. Well, it's I'm out of gas for today. That's it. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good day. Be kind, love one another, live well.
Say please.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
Goodbye.